The moment the boy stepped into the bank, every eye seemed to pass over him, except one. The billionaire woman at the counter laughed so loudly it echoed through the marble hall. Look at him. A kid like this, thinking he belongs here, she sneered, her voice sharp, full of disdain. He froze for a second, feeling the weight of her eyes, the weight of every person who whispered or stared, judging him. But he didn't run. He didn't cry. He walked forward, tiny fingers clutching his worn-out card, determined to do what he had come to do. If you want to see a story that will leave you speechless, one that proves courage and hope can beat mockery and wealth, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because what happens next will shock everyone. He approached the ATM at the far end of the bank, his small body almost swallowed by the gleaming marble floors and tall glass doors. His shoes were dusty, his jacket torn, and his cap slightly askew, but he walked steadily, as if every step had been measured for this very moment. The billionaire woman followed him with her gaze, smirking, shaking her head, laughing quietly to herself. You think you can do something here? A child with dusty shoes? This is my world, and you don't belong. The boy's lips pressed together. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His mind replayed his mother's last words, spoken softly before she left him in this world that wasn't always kind. When the time is right, you'll see what Mama left for you. Never let anyone tell you who you are, baby. He reached the ATM, placed the card in the slot, and pressed the numbers with trembling fingers, each beep sounding louder in the silent hall. The billionaire woman laughed again, louder this time, so everyone around could hear. Your savings? Really? You've got a bank account. Her voice dripped with mockery. People turned their heads. Some smiled. Some shook theirs in disbelief. But the boy didn't flinch. He pressed the final number. Enter. The screen blinked. And then, something strange happened. The machine whirred and paused. The billionaire raised an eyebrow, leaning forward with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Don't tell me. Your account is actually real? She said, her smirk faltering slightly. He swallowed and whispered, barely audible. I just want to see if it's still there. The words were simple, quiet, almost fragile, but they carried the weight of years spent surviving, of nights without food, of hope clinging to hope. The line behind them started to murmur, people growing impatient. But nobody stepped forward to defend him. Nobody dared. Yet the ATM remained patient, humming like a silent guardian, as if it knew the stakes. The billionaire woman, accustomed to power and control, had never seen someone like this, someone so small and vulnerable, yet so unshakably determined. Finally, the ATM screen changed. The numbers began to appear slowly, almost theatrically. The boy's eyes widened slightly, not from surprise, but from the steady, careful realization that the moment had come. The moment when his mother's gift, years of careful saving and planning, would finally be revealed. The billionaire woman leaned closer, her laughter gone, replaced with a cold curiosity. Her eyes narrowed. The small boy in front of her, the one she had mocked so freely, suddenly seemed larger than life. She took a step back, her designer handbag slipping slightly from her arm. Impossible, she whispered. Her voice shook just enough to reveal her shock. The boy, silent as ever, didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The truth was clear on the screen. Numbers that no one expected, numbers that proved mockery could never overpower resilience. People stopped talking. Even the clerks behind the counters paused, staring at the unfolding scene. The boy's fingers hovered over the keypad as he watched the screen blink, his chest rising and falling with controlled excitement. Memories of his mother flooded back, the envelope she had entrusted to him, her soft smile, her gentle encouragement. Never let the world scare you, she had whispered. Hold on to your courage. And now, standing here, facing ridicule, he realized she had prepared him for this exact moment. The billionaire woman, now pale and speechless, realized that laughter, wealth, and power couldn't erase the truth. The boy had survived the streets, poverty, and mockery, and he had arrived at this ATM with something far more powerful than her billions: hope, courage, and determination. The moment was tense, electric. The screen blinked, waiting for the final confirmation. And when it did, it revealed a reality that would change how the billionaire saw him, and perhaps how the world would remember this little boy. The boy's small smile appeared, quiet and steady, almost imperceptible. He hadn't expected applause. He hadn't expected pity. He only wanted to see what had been left for him, and to prove, silently but firmly, that mockery and wealth could never dictate a child's destiny. The billionaire woman's hands tightened on her bag, her mouth open, yet no words came. She had mocked him, laughed at him, dismissed him. And now, the ATM revealed the truth. The world, for a brief moment, stopped. The screen blinked one final time, and the numbers revealed themselves in full. The boy's account balance wasn't just surprising, it was staggering. Every penny his mother had saved, every small coin he had secretly added, every careful calculation he had made over the years, it all added up. The billionaire woman's jaw dropped. Her laughter, once sharp and mocking, had vanished completely. She stepped back as if the glowing numbers had physically struck her. The boy stared at the screen, not with pride, but with quiet satisfaction. His journey had been long and difficult, filled with nights on cold streets, mornings without breakfast, and days when hope seemed impossible. But he had kept his promise, not to anyone else, but to his mother. And now, the proof was undeniable. People around them were beginning to murmur. Some whispered in disbelief, others nudged their friends to look. The clerks behind the counters leaned forward, eyes wide. Nobody could ignore what had just appeared on the screen. The billionaire woman, however, was frozen, her mind racing. She had mocked him without hesitation, certain of her superiority, and now, the numbers on that screen were a slap she could not deny. That can't be real, she stammered, finally finding a voice. This must be some mistake. Her eyes darted nervously to the bank manager, who shook his head. The ATM never lies. The manager didn't need to say it. The machine's confirmation was enough. The truth glowed on the screen, clear and undeniable. The boy took a deep breath and stepped back from the ATM, glancing briefly at the woman. There was no anger in his eyes, no desire to humiliate, just a calm, quiet strength that spoke louder than any words could. The woman, on the other hand, could barely meet his gaze. Her pride, her arrogance, her sense of superiority, it all seemed trivial in that moment. She had thought she could laugh at a child, that wealth and power were untouchable shields against the unexpected. She was wrong. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out the small envelope his mother had given him years ago. It was worn, fragile at the edges, but inside was the key to all of this. The ATM had confirmed it. His careful planning, his persistence, his unwavering belief in what his mother had left him, it had worked. The billionaire woman took a step forward, hesitating, unsure how to react. Part of her wanted to scoff, to dismiss it again. But another part, deep down, knew she had underestimated him. The boy's voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of experience far beyond his years. She trusted me to keep it safe, he said softly, almost as if speaking to the machine, to the memory of his mother, and not to the mocking woman who had laughed at him. I did what she asked. I didn't let anyone take it from me. Silence fell over the bank. The whispers stopped. The only sound was the soft hum of the ATM, as if it too was holding its breath, acknowledging the boy's triumph. The billionaire woman's expression softened slightly, a flicker of shame and awe passing through her eyes. For the first time, she realized that wealth and power could be meaningless in the face of determination, courage, and careful planning. She cleared her throat, trying to regain some control of the situation. I didn't realize, she said, her voice uneven. I thought, but she didn't finish. Words were unnecessary. The truth had already spoken. The boy had turned her laughter into silence, mockery into respect, simply by being steadfast, careful, and persistent. The boy nodded politely, slipping the envelope back into his pocket. He didn't need her approval. He didn't need applause. What he needed was done. He had proven that he could protect what mattered, that he could honor his mother's trust, and that even a small, overlooked child could hold a power greater than wealth, ridicule, or arrogance. As he walked toward the exit, the billionaire woman watched him go. She felt something unfamiliar, a strange respect, mixed with regret. She had laughed at him without thought, assuming that his life had no value, that his efforts were insignificant. And now, she knew she had been completely wrong. Outside the bank, the boy paused for a moment, taking in the cool morning air. The city seemed bigger than ever, alive with opportunity and challenge, but he didn't feel fear. Not anymore. He had faced ridicule, doubt, and scorn, and he had prevailed. He had faced the world and found that it could not take from him what truly mattered. The envelope in his pocket was more than just money. It was a symbol of his mother's trust, her hope, her love. And in that moment, he realized that the greatest wealth was not measured in dollars, but in the courage to stand up, to protect what is precious, and to never give up, no matter how small or powerless one may seem. And the billionaire woman, watching from the bank doors, understood something vital too. Her money, her power, and her influence could not buy the lessons this small boy had lived. She had been reminded that true strength often comes from those who have nothing but still give everything. The boy walked away slowly, feeling the weight of the city on his shoulders, but also the lightness of having achieved something extraordinary. Every step he took carried the quiet knowledge that he had honored his mother, defended what was hers, and shown the world that courage and determination are forces that no wealth can overpower. And behind him, in the quiet hum of the bank, the billionaire woman finally spoke, almost to herself. I should have never laughed. I should have never mocked him, but the boy was gone. The lesson had been delivered, silently and powerfully, by the one she had underestimated. The world, she realized, had just given her a reminder that would stay with her forever. Never underestimate anyone, because even the smallest, quietest person can reveal a truth more powerful than money, more lasting than pride, and more shocking than anyone could imagine. The boy stepped out of the bank, his heart still pounding, but a calm determination settled over him. Outside, the city was alive with its usual chaos. Cars honking, people rushing to work, street vendors calling out, but none of it mattered. Nothing could touch the quiet victory he had just earned. He walked with his head held high, the envelope in his pocket a reminder of all he had endured and all he had achieved. Meanwhile, inside the bank, the billionaire woman couldn't shake the image of the boy from her mind. She had laughed at him, mocked him, and assumed he had nothing. And yet, he had come in here, small and fragile looking, and revealed a truth that even her millions could not overshadow. She stared at the ATM, at the screen still glowing faintly, and felt a mix of shame and admiration she had never experienced before. Her laughter, once a weapon, had been silenced by the simplest of things: persistence, hope, and courage. Outside, the boy found a quiet bench near a small fountain. He sat down and opened the envelope, carefully unfolding the note inside. His mother's handwriting, elegant and familiar, filled the page. My dearest, it read, this is for you. Not for me, not for the world, only for you. Keep it safe, protect it, and let it grow. One day, you will understand its true value. Tears welled up in his eyes as he read the words. She had trusted him, given him a responsibility, and he had fulfilled it. A passerby paused, noticing the boy sitting alone with a mixture of focus and serenity on his face. They didn't know his story, they didn't understand the battles he had fought, but something about him made them stop and watch. There was strength in his quiet, resilience in his posture, and a kind of dignity that no circumstance could erase. Back in the bank, the billionaire woman finally found her voice. She called her assistant over, her tone unusually soft, almost hesitant. Bring me the boy's account details, she said. I need to understand how this is possible. The assistant raised an eyebrow but nodded, sensing the gravity of her request. Something had shifted. The woman who had laughed without thought was now driven by curiosity, perhaps even a need to make amends, or at least to understand. The boy, unaware of her plans, carefully placed the note back into the envelope and secured it inside his pocket. He stood, taking one last glance at the fountain. The ripples in the water reflected his own journey, small beginnings leading to something far greater than he had imagined. He had survived ridicule, poverty, and doubt. He had faced a world that had underestimated him at every turn, and yet here he was, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. As he walked away, he couldn't help but think about the lessons his mother had taught him. Courage isn't loud. Strength isn't about who shouts the most or who has the most money. True power is quiet, persistent, and unseen by those who refuse to look beyond appearances. He had learned that, and he had lived it. Meanwhile, the billionaire woman had summoned the bank manager to her side. Her eyes were sharp, but there was a new respect in them. Explain everything, she demanded. But this time there was no mockery in her tone, only genuine curiosity. The manager hesitated, then began to explain the history of the boy's account. How a series of careful deposits, savings, and smart growth over the years had resulted in the impossible balance now visible on the ATM. Each detail added to her shock. She had underestimated not just him, but the entire concept of patience and careful planning outside her own world. The boy continued down the street, unaware of the ripples his actions had created. He walked past cafes, bookstores, and busy offices, yet his mind was focused on a single thought. He had kept his promise. He had honored his mother. And nothing, neither laughter, ridicule, nor wealth, could change that. Every step he took was a testament to resilience. A small crowd of onlookers began to gather outside the bank, people whispering and pointing at the billionaire woman still standing there, clearly shaken. Some had recorded the entire scene on their phones, sensing something extraordinary had happened. The boy, far ahead, did not know this, but his actions were already creating waves. The world had noticed, even if the participants inside the bank were only beginning to realize it. He paused for a moment, looking at the skyline of the city. He thought about his mother again, her laughter, her wisdom, her unwavering belief in him. Without her, he might never have had the courage to enter that bank, to face ridicule, or to trust in the strength of his own persistence. Her guidance had led him here, and now, every choice he made felt like a continuation of her legacy. Back in the bank, the billionaire woman finally took a deep breath. She realized that mocking someone based on appearances had been her greatest mistake. She had judged too quickly, laughed too easily, and assumed that money and power gave her insight into what truly matters. But the boy had taught her something invaluable. Strength, courage, and determination are often hidden in places where no one thinks to look. The boy walked on, the envelope in his pocket like a small treasure chest of hope and responsibility. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need praise. He had learned a lesson far more important than money or status. He had learned that even the smallest, quietest people can achieve extraordinary things if they hold on to their courage and believe in what they are protecting. And somewhere, behind the bank doors, a billionaire woman was learning the same lesson, but from the wrong side of a lesson that could not be ignored. The boy walked down the busy street, his steps calm but deliberate, as if every stride was a silent declaration. He had survived, and he had won. The envelope in his pocket was heavier than it seemed, not because of the money, but because of what it represented: his mother's trust, her hope, and the weight of the promise he had carried all these years. The city moved around him, a blur of hurried people, honking cars, and flashing lights, yet none of it could shake his focus. He had proven something far greater than anyone could imagine. Meanwhile, inside the bank, the billionaire woman could no longer sit still. She paced back and forth, her mind racing. How could a child, someone she had dismissed without a second thought, hold such wealth, such foresight, such determination? She replayed the scene in her mind again and again. His small hands on the keypad, his steady gaze, the calmness that refused to break even under her mockery. She had thought she understood power, but she had been blind. She had laughed, thinking money and influence made her untouchable, only to realize that she had underestimated the quiet strength of a boy with nothing but persistence and faith. Outside, the boy stopped near a small park. Children played nearby, laughing and chasing each other, carefree in a way he had rarely experienced. He watched them quietly, feeling a strange warmth. He thought of his mother again, and the life she had hoped he would have. The envelope wasn't just a bank account, it was a bridge to that life, a symbol of the future she had imagined for him. He felt her presence in every step, every breath, every decision. He found a bench and sat down, opening the envelope once more. Inside was a note, carefully folded, with words written in the careful, loving script of his mother. "My dearest, always remember, courage is not loud, and strength is not measured in size or money. Protect what matters. Never let the world tell you your worth. One day, the world will see what I knew all along. You are stronger than anyone can imagine." He read the words slowly, letting each syllable sink in. They were a reminder of why he had endured, why he had persisted, and why he had walked into that bank, despite the ridicule waiting for him. Back in the bank, the billionaire woman had called in her financial advisors, demanding an explanation. Her tone had shifted from arrogance to curiosity, from mockery to disbelief. "Show me the calculations," she demanded. The advisors, nervous yet respectful, detailed the boy's deposits, his careful planning, and the consistent growth of the account. Each explanation chipped away at her confidence, leaving her to face a reality she had never imagined. This boy, this small, overlooked child, had accomplished something even she could not replicate. The crowd outside the bank was growing. People whispered and pointed, some recording videos on their phones. The story was spreading faster than anyone inside could control. The billionaire woman glanced at the door, then back at the screen, feeling an unusual weight settle on her shoulders. She had been taught to command respect, to wield wealth like armor, but none of it mattered here. She had been wrong. The lesson, delivered quietly but powerfully by a child, was undeniable. Meanwhile, the boy stood, brushing off his worn jacket. He didn't notice the attention, the whispers, or the cameras. His focus remained on the envelope in his pocket and the memory of his mother's guidance. Each step he took was a reminder of every obstacle he had overcome: hunger, cold nights, loneliness, and the constant judgment of a world that often looked down on him. But he had endured. He had triumphed. And he had done it without anger, without revenge, only with quiet resilience and determination. As he walked toward the subway, he noticed a young woman watching him from across the street. Her expression was a mix of admiration and curiosity. She seemed to sense the story behind his quiet confidence, the struggles he had faced, and the courage that now radiated from him. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge her presence, but her eyes followed him, reflecting a silent understanding. Sometimes, the smallest among us carry the heaviest truths, the deepest courage, and the most inspiring stories. Back in the bank, the billionaire woman finally sat down, exhausted. She had summoned her assistants, her advisors, and even the manager, yet no one could fully explain the lesson she had just witnessed. She had laughed at him. She had mocked him. And yet, he had emerged victorious. Not through wealth, not through influence, but through quiet strength, persistence, and the courage to trust in what truly mattered. For the first time in her life, she felt small, humbled, and forced to reflect on the arrogance she had carried for years. The boy stepped into the subway station, blending into the crowd. Yet even here, he felt the presence of the world he had left behind, the echo of the lessons he had learned, and the quiet satisfaction of having honored his mother's memory. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need applause. His victory was personal, profound, and lasting. Every step forward was a testament to what one could achieve with courage, determination, and unwavering belief in oneself. And somewhere, in the marble halls of the bank, the billionaire woman whispered to herself, almost in disbelief, "I should have never laughed. I should have never doubted him." But the lesson had been delivered. The boy had left, the envelope in his pocket, the memory of his mother alive in his heart, and a story that would ripple far beyond the walls of that bank. The world often underestimates the quiet, the small, the seemingly powerless. But that day, in that bank, on that street, and in the heart of one determined boy, the truth had been revealed. Strength isn't measured by wealth. Courage isn't measured by age or size. And even the smallest voice, when filled with determination and faith, can command the attention of the world and leave a lesson no one will ever forget. The boy emerged from the subway into the golden light of late afternoon. The city buzzed around him, oblivious to the storm he had left behind in the bank. He adjusted his worn jacket and tightened his grip on the envelope in his pocket. It wasn't just money. It was a promise, a legacy, and a proof that courage and perseverance could outshine ridicule, arrogance, and even wealth. Every step he took carried the weight of what he had survived and the quiet strength of what he had achieved. Meanwhile, back in the bank, the billionaire woman had finally come to terms with what had happened. She sat alone, staring at the ATM screen, the numbers still glowing faintly in her mind. For the first time in her life, she felt the sting of humility. She had mocked a child, laughed at him, assumed she understood his life without knowing a single detail. And yet he had shown her something she could never have bought or commanded: integrity, patience, and quiet power. She realized that she had been wrong, not just about him, but about how she had judged people all her life. Outside, The boy walked through a quieter street now, the bustle of the city softening into calm. He thought about his mother again, about the lessons she had taught him, that courage doesn't need applause, that true strength is invisible until it is tested, and that hope, no matter how fragile, can move mountains. He smiled faintly. He had kept her faith alive. He had protected what she had left him. And the world, as fleeting as it may be, had finally acknowledged that a small boy could achieve something extraordinary. A few people had begun to notice him. Some whispered, some stared, some even nudged each other to look. Rumors of what had happened in the bank had spread, carried by phones, social media, and word of mouth. People were astonished, not by the wealth itself, but by the courage it represented. A child who had endured hardship, who had been mocked and underestimated, had stood tall and proven the unimaginable. And that message resonated far beyond the confines of that marble hall. The billionaire woman, meanwhile, had called for a meeting with her advisors. She wanted to understand everything: the boy's savings, the process, the discipline that had led to this result. But deep down, she already knew the truth. It wasn't just about money. It was about character, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. She had been schooled in humility by someone she had considered powerless, and the lesson was one she would carry forever. The boy paused near a small playground, watching the children swing and laugh. He remembered the days he had spent longing for moments like this, times when he could have played, laughed, and been carefree. Life hadn't given him those moments, but it had given him something more powerful: lessons in survival, perseverance, and self-respect. He realized now that what he carried, his mother's faith, the envelope, and his courage, was worth more than anything else. He opened the envelope one last time, carefully unfolding the note and rereading his mother's words. Courage is not loud. Strength is not measured in size or wealth. Protect what matters. Believe in yourself, even when the world does not. Tears stung his eyes, but they were tears of triumph, of fulfillment, of a promise kept. His mother had trusted him, and he had honored her trust. That was victory enough. Somewhere behind him, he heard a soft voice calling, hesitant but curious. The billionaire woman had followed him out of the bank. She kept her distance, unsure how to approach him, unsure what words could ever undo the arrogance she had shown. But the boy didn't look back. He kept walking, steady, calm, dignified, and she realized that approaching him wasn't necessary. This wasn't about confrontation. This was about respect. Respect she hadn't earned, but now desperately wanted to acknowledge. The boy finally stopped near a quiet park bench. He turned slightly, and the woman approached cautiously, her steps slow and deliberate. I owe you an apology," she said, her voice soft, sincere. "I should have never laughed. I should have never doubted you." The boy looked at her briefly, the faintest hint of a smile on his face. He didn't need her apology to feel victorious, but he accepted it in silence, recognizing the moment as a lesson for her as well as for the world. "You've shown me something important," she continued. "Something I didn't understand before. Strength, courage, determination. These aren't measured by money or power. I see that now." The boy nodded gently, his eyes calm, serene. He didn't need to say anything. His life, his actions, and the lesson of the ATM had already spoken louder than words ever could. He turned and began walking again, leaving her behind, but leaving a mark she would never forget. The envelope in his pocket was a symbol, yes, but it was also a reminder that true victory doesn't need recognition, applause, or power. It needs courage, patience, and faith. And he had all three. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the city, the boy disappeared into the streets, carrying not just his mother's legacy, but a story that would inspire everyone who heard it. A story of courage overcoming mockery, of persistence defying ridicule, and of a small boy proving that the heart is far more powerful than wealth, pride, or status. And somewhere, far behind him, the billionaire woman remained standing, silent and reflective, realizing that she had witnessed a miracle disguised as a child. A lesson had been delivered, one she could never forget. Never underestimate anyone, because even the smallest person, with hope and determination, can change the course of lives, and even the world, forever. The city hummed on, oblivious to the quiet revolution that had just taken place. But for those who knew, who had seen, or who would hear the story later, one truth would remain. Courage, hope, and faith can make the impossible possible. And sometimes, the most underestimated person is the one who leaves the greatest mark. The boy walked on, quiet, steady, and unbroken, carrying the proof that he could survive anything, and that the world could be changed, one courageous step at a time.